Mr. Tagore kept explaining that those who had received the dark gears always followed the orders of whoever gave them the dark gears and became loyal servants of the Dark Guild. Blue Sword realized he had nearly become a great apostle of the Dark Guild. Mr. Tagore reminded him that he had been controlled but not fully integrated. If he had turned evil, Blue Sword would have become a demon pillar with his skills alone. The Sword Saint Guild president was relieved that Bose had come to help, as he couldn't handle what had happened on his own. Bose said it was natural to help since he had once been part of the guild. Blue Sword then praised Yi Lifu for his strength after seeing the cards that could defeat the pillar demons. Yi Lifu proudly said it was all thanks to Le Ping, who had given them the powerful cards. The Dwarf Guild president then asked Le Ping where he had learned blacksmithing to create the cards, noticing that the sword on Le Ping's back was not simple either. Le Ping said he only did handicrafts at home to pass the time and didn't involve blacksmithing. The Dwarf Guild president laughed at how humble Le Ping was. Suddenly, the yellow-haired girl spoke up and said that the Dark Guild wouldn't dare ruin the event if the Sword Saint was there. The red-haired girl advised her not to talk too much. Le Ping became curious and asked Bose if the Sword Saint was the strongest swordsman and where they could be found. Bose, feeling concerned, said he couldn't answer because he was no longer part of the Sword Saint Guild. The president of the Sword Saint Guild said it was okay and admitted that rumors had already spread, so things couldn't be kept secret much longer. The Dwarf Guild president wondered if the rumors were true. Mr. Tagore explained that after the rebellion of the Sword Saint Guild, not only did their fighting power decrease, but the Sword Saint went missing. That's why the Dark Guild seized the opportunity to attack. The president of the Sword Saint Guild said they last heard from the Sword Saint 6 months ago. Le Ping was confused about the rebellion and the missing Sword Saint. Ash then explained that the Sword Saint had gone to arrest Elder Axe, who had betrayed the guild, but the Sword Saint hadn't returned yet. Blue Sword mentioned that his previous mission was to assist the Sword Saint. But when they arrived at the location, nobody was there. The yellow-haired girl reminded them that the Sword Saint had been promoted to a 5-star Demon Sovereign, just one step below the Demon King level. She said it would be easy for the Sword Saint to apprehend Elder Axe, who had recently become a Demon Sovereign. Blue Sword added that nobody would question the Sword Saint's authority. However, when he ventured into the mountains, they found large traces of sword slashes at the mountain's base. As he climbed higher, he was shocked to discover that half of the mountain range had been leveled to the ground. He imagined how terrifying the battle there must have been. The Sword Saint Guild Elder confessed that Elder Axe had obtained a supreme magic weapon. It was a giant axe called Demon Burial, emitting terrifying resentment. Its power was so immense that it easily closed the gap in strength between Elder Axe and the Sword Saint. The Dwarf Guild president confirmed that they hadn't recorded the forging of an S-class weapon like Burial, and assumed it was a masterpiece created by the Dark Guild. Le Ping had then asked Yi Lifu why Elder Axe had betrayed his guild in the first place. Bose had explained that under the leadership of the Sword Saint, there were 5 elders who assisted her in handling various matters and guiding the disciples. He introduced the elder next to him as Elder Sword, and the others were known as Elder Dagger, Elder Spear, Elder Shield, and Elder Axe. When Elder Axe betrayed the guild, he brutally murdered Elder Dagger and Elder Spear. Elder Sword had explained that Elder Shield had died in the battle against the pillars of the Dark Guild. At that moment, he was the only one left with seniority in the guild. During the rebellion, many members took the opportunity to betray them, including his son named C. Buckthorn Terries. Le Ping was surprised and asked if C. Buckthorn Terries was the sword-wielding centaur. Learning that his son was a centaur, it implied that Elder Sword had relations with a horse. Elder Sword was shocked that Le Ping knew his son and asked if they had met. Without guilt, Le Ping confessed that the centaur was dead. The Elder Sword told Le Ping that it didn't matter anymore. This was the fate of the traitor. Many factors had caused the Sword Saint Guild to be in its most unstable times. He just wanted everyone to unite to fight against the Dark Guild. The Dwarf Guild president asked the Elder Sword if they could just provide them with weapons. The Dwarf Kingdom wouldn't have any problems then. However, getting A or S level weapons would be difficult due to the lack of grinding stones, although his father was already considering a solution. Mr. Tagore reminded Elder Sword that he had been going through his most unstable times and wondered why he thought he could destroy the Dark Guild with their help. Elder Sword replied that it depended on Bose. He believed Bose should give up his own guild and return to serve as the vice president of the Sword Saint Guild. Bose was really surprised and asked Elder Sword if he truly wanted him to serve as the vice president. However, he was afraid it wasn't appropriate since he had left the guild for a while. Elder Sword explained that Bose was more suitable than he thought. Cards could be considered weapons just like daggers and flying knives. If Mr. Bose became the vice president of the Sword Saint Guild, they could open a new unit and let Yi Leifu serve as the elder. Yi Leifu felt really nervous, expressing that she wasn't qualified to be an elder of the Sword Saint Guild. Elder Sword assured her that as long as Bose agreed, he guaranteed that everything would go smoothly. He promised that the guild's resources would be at Bose's disposal, and he would even obey Bose's orders. Butler Ash informed Bose that the elder was genuinely sincere in his intentions. The position of vice president meant he was one person above 10,000, which was much easier than establishing his own guild. He encouraged Bose to consider the suggestion. Afterward, Bose turned to Le Ping and asked for his opinion. He wondered if, with the aid of the Sword Saint Guild's fame, the card skill would spread faster. Le Ping was really surprised that Bose was seeking his advice. He mentioned a saying from his hometown: "It's much easier to become a senior executive in a large company than to start your own business." However, those who are more ambitious will choose to start their own business, so it still depends on their personal desires. Le Ping thought to himself that as a person with no ambition, he shouldn't be giving advice to others. Bose misunderstood Le Ping's words, thinking that Le Ping believed he needed to be someone's accessory to elevate himself. If Bose had only that much ambition, Le Ping was really disappointed in him. However, Bose found himself in a tough situation, wondering if Le Ping was trying to help him. But Elder Sword, being very strict, might reject him directly. This would be disrespectful and would offend the entire Sword Saint Guild. Elder Sword asked Bose if he was still satisfied and encouraged him to put forward any conditions. Bose stood up from his seat and told Elder Sword that he didn't need to say anything else. He established his own guild not because he wanted to pursue fame and wealth, but because he wanted to improve his card skills. Then he wondered if Le Ping could see that his determination was strong. Elder Sword asked Bose if he had thought this through. However, Elder Sword was really surprised and couldn't sense the aura of this strong man named Le Ping. He suggested that being taught by him might be an excuse to hide his background. Ping replied, saying the conditions were good, but he'd have thought he could count on his connections to Bose to learn swordsmanship from the Sword Saint Guild. After that, Bose refused to return to the guild but assured Elder Sword not to worry, explaining that it was his responsibility to eliminate the Dark Guild and his guild would fully support the Sword Saint Guild in the future. Elder Sword agreed with Mr. Bose, saying he understood. However, according to the agreement, the Sword Saint Guild would recognize the legitimacy of Bose's card guild. Le Ping didn't know what to say. He could only express that Bose was very courageous. However, for Bose, the most important thing was Le Ping's satisfaction, and they had worked really hard to satisfy Ping. Meanwhile, Elder Sword asked the Dwarf Guild president when the king would return from seclusion, as the provision of A and S level weapons could greatly enhance their combat power. Dwarf Guild president replied that he couldn't tell Elder Sword, but the shortage of grinding stones was a big issue, and the entire kingdom couldn't find a proper substitute. The Aristotle kingdom refused to cooperate, so his father was researching in seclusion. However, they couldn't do anything at that moment. Elder Sword didn't know what to do, so he asked Mr. Tagore for his opinion on the request for weapons and combatant spells. Mr. Tagore, being a neutral party, didn't have a big problem with casting spells for Elder Sword. Elder Sword then suggested that everyone come to a mutual understanding of their plan. He proposed that in 2 months, they would gather their forces and do their best to solve the issues at hand. He also asked if anyone had questions. Suddenly, Le Ping raised his hand and asked if he could join. Elder Sword was surprised and asked if Le Ping wanted to join the battle against the Dark Guild. Le Ping replied that no, he actually wanted to join the Sword Saint Guild to learn swordsmanship. Even though he had been inactive for a long time, he felt it wasn't too late to start learning again. Bose asked Le Ping if he was joking and why he wanted to learn swordsmanship. Le Ping explained that Princess Elizabeth had arranged it for him, and if they wanted to know more, they should ask her. Bose and Yi Leifu, after seeing Elizabeth, didn't dare to question Le Ping's plan. Elder Sword agreed with Le Ping, but he wanted to know which type of swordsmanship Le Ping wanted to learn and what his magic level was. Le Ping admitted that his magic level seemed to be very low, explaining that he wasn't very good at magic. Ash mentioned that if Le Ping didn't excel in magic, he wouldn't be able to use the magic sword taught by the Elder Sword. After hearing this, Le Ping asked if any regular sword techniques didn't require magic. The Elder Sword replied affirmatively, but mentioned that only one person had mastered such techniques. the president of the Sword Saint Guild. Li Ping could learn from her if he found her. Bose also agreed, stating that only those qualified, like the Sword Saint, could teach Li Ping. Upon hearing this, Li Ping started crying, worried about finding the Sword Saint. He felt they didn't believe he was worthy and wouldn't help him. Suddenly, Mr. Tagore told everyone to wait and then did something magical. All of a sudden, a book appeared out of thin air. He wrote something in the book, and then the magic spell started floating in the air. He explained that he had recorded some sword skills spells in the book, which might help Li Ping. He happily gave those spells to Li Ping, who asked Mr. Tagore how to use them. Meanwhile, Elizabeth had finished eating her pudding. Li Ping asked her to look at the spell that recorded swordsmanship skills, but Elizabeth didn't pay attention. Instead, she quickly got back to what she wanted to do and dealt with a bug that was causing trouble. She gripped her hand and suddenly, Mr. Tagore exploded like a fruit, splattering blood everywhere. On the other side, in the desert, a battle was raging. The one in the midst of it was Sword Saint Chi-Chi Saugus, who also happened to be the president of the Sword Saint Guild. She called out for Elder Axe to reveal himself instead of hiding. Elder Axe, in turn, asked her what her problem was and why she kept bothering him. Chi-Chi Saugus replied that she needed to address his crime of collaborating with the Dark Guild and intended to eliminate him once and for all. She then used her sword sheath technique and attacked Elder Axe. However, Elder Axe countered her attack using his demonic axe. He roared as he felt his power surging and used the power of the demonic axe to launch a counterattack against Chi-Chi Saugus, but the Sword Saint calmly evaded his strike. Elder Axe remarked that as his fusion with the demon burial kept deepening, the threat posed by the Sword Saint to him decreased. He predicted that soon it would be his turn to pose a threat to her. However, Chi-Chi Saugus paid no heed to his warnings. She cautioned Elder Axe that if he persisted in his stubbornness and refusal to repent, he would eventually be completely overtaken by the axe and lose himself. She urged him to wake up and face reality. Nevertheless, Elder Axe seemed unconcerned about losing himself. He explained that after experiencing the supreme power, losing oneself was a privilege. He assured himself that everything would be fine soon and beckoned the demon burial to take control of his body. Suddenly, Elder Axe's body underwent a transformation, turning into that of a female. With the demon burial now in control, she declared with resentment that she was finally free while talking about her resentment when she was abandoned. The elder's body started changing into that of a woman, gaining features like a big chest, wide hips, and a curvy behind, much to their surprise. After the change, they warned the Sword Saint, saying, "No matter where you go, I'll always find you." Seeing this transformation, the Sword Saint understood that Elder Axe was fully controlled by the Dark Gear. However, Sword Axe smiled, laid his hand on the Dark Gear, and dared the Sword Saint. He suggested she was underestimating him, and that his anger made the dark power seem weak. Then he forcefully took off the Dark Gear along with some skin. The whole body's skin was dragged along, and Demon Burial took on her real form, a beautiful woman with a youthful appearance. Damn, from grandpa to mommy real quick. Demon Burial remained unfazed by the Sword Saint's declaration to destroy her that day. When the Sword Saint summoned her phantom super weapon, the hoof armor of the legendary monster Phantom Horse King, forged by the Dwarf King himself, Demon Burial chose to face it head-on. This armor, capable of increasing the wearer's speed tenfold and granting the effect of being as swift as the wind, seemed like her best chance against Demon Burial. Despite Demon Burial's taunts, the Sword Saint remained unbothered. She called upon her Mist Chop technique, causing massive destruction within a 100-meter radius and leaving a gaping hole in the ground as a result. She claimed that there was no need to hold back and show mercy since Elder Axe was technically dead already. Even though the attack was strong, the Sword Saint was surprised when her phantom sword broke. Demon Burial, however, was untouched. She mentioned feeling stiff at first, which made it hard to block some hits, but she recognized the Sword Saint's power. Thinking back on the sword made from the Phantom Horse King's failed attempt to harm Demon Burial, the Sword Saint considered what to do next. Demon Burial warmed up, waiting for the Sword Saint to make her next move. This prompted the Sword Saint to summon 2 more weapons from her storage. She used weapon fusion, combining a stalactite spear forged by the Dwarf King over 1,000 years ago with a rare stalactite, along with an insect scythe also crafted by the Dwarf King using the gem of the Insect King, a mantis sickle. As the 2 weapons combined, she also summoned the Kulu Cane and explosive knife, both super weapons with unique dangers and powers. Combining all her super weapons, the Sword Saint launched a full-on attack on Demon Burial. Meanwhile, Demon Burial finished her warm-up after stretching some stiff bones, totally unbothered by the Sword Saint's fury and arrogance. The Sword Saint also summoned the Snow Silkworm Shield, a super weapon forged from the pupa silk of the sacred beast, Snow White Silkworms, by the Dwarf King. It was known for its toughness and ability to create bursts of cold air. Demon Burial stood her ground, challenging the Sword Saint's underestimation. She combined the powers of her weapons. The Sword Saint created a twisted space with the Kulu cane and allowed the explosive knife to continuously explode, releasing the Earth's core energy. She knew she could only maintain this energy for a short time before her mind risked invasion. Finally, the Sword Saint summoned the Hammer of All, a super weapon forged by the Dwarf King from the fossilized bones of a mammoth lord weighing 100 tons. Even a normal blow from this hammer could unleash ultimate power. With this weapon, she aimed for Demon Burial, determined to end the fight. However, when Demon Burial used the splitting cut technique and sliced through the Sword Saint's powerful weapon, the Sword Saint was surprised by the attack. She realized that if she didn't block it, she would die. So without wasting any time, she used Abyss magic to summon 7 guard swords. Suddenly, 7 swords appeared in front of her as a shield. However, this wasn't enough to stop Demon Burial's attack. It broke through the Sword Saint's defense and heavily damaged her. In just 0.8 seconds, Demon Burial murdered the Sword Saint. Seeing the Sword Saint in this state, Demon Burial wondered if she was truly inadequate. Yet she wasn't satisfied with the fight. It was just a warm-up for her. The real battle was about to begin. She used her demonic axe to search for any heartless ones. With the help of her demonic axe, she could see for thousands of miles. Suddenly, she spotted a house in the middle of nowhere. It was the Le Ping's house, where Le Ping and Elizabeth lived. She was thrilled to see Elizabeth and exclaimed that she was heading there right away. At the Le Ping house, Elizabeth grabbed the remote and turned on the air conditioner. She commented that it was nice to be home, where she could relax, watch TV, and eat chips. She thought Le Ping should handle all the troublesome world domination stuff. However, Le Ping felt worn out every time he had to deal with it. He wondered if ruling the world wasn't right for him. Elizabeth disagreed, saying they had to stick to their plan. She reassured Le Ping that she'd help him, but Le Ping felt frustrated because of what Elizabeth had done at the Sword Saint Guild. He asked her to let him know before making such decisions next time. Some time ago, within the Sword Saint Guild, Elizabeth murdered one of the elders, which shocked the guild's president, Elder Sword. He quickly informed everyone to be on high alert. Butler Ash, the red-haired girl Anna, and her sister drew their swords to confront Elizabeth. Blue Sword also summoned his remaining sword Key, but after the Great Apostle took over his body, he didn't have much control left. Meanwhile, the dwarf president was surprised by Elizabeth's strength and decided it was best to stay out of the fray and observe. After the incident, Bose tried to calm everyone down and asked them to listen to him. He then turned to Le Ping, wondering if he could explain what was happening. Le Ping, feeling confused, didn't understand what situation Bose was referring to. Elizabeth was disappointed as she explained that considering their level, it wasn't surprising they had been infiltrated by the Dark Guild. Le Ping, feeling confused, asked Elizabeth to clarify. She then showed the sword skill Mr. Tagore had given to Le Ping, insisting that everyone pay attention. Soon after, she unleashed her resolve magic, and suddenly, a parasite appeared in front of everyone. The Sword Saint Guild's Elder Sword was genuinely shocked by the parasite's appearance. Upon realizing it had been discovered, the parasite began to consider its next move. However, upon spotting Le Ping as an easy target with no magic, it immediately attacked him. Le Ping was taken aback by the sudden assault, having no time to react. Fortunately, Elizabeth acted swiftly and destroyed the parasite. After Elizabeth dealt with the parasite, Butler Ash noticed that Mr. Tagore's body was under a spell technique. The girl with yellow hair was shocked by this revelation, wondering if even a prominent figure like Mr. Tagore had joined the Dark Guild. Anna, the girl with red hair, explained that it made sense. More and more people were accepting the power of the Dark Guild, and they were able to evade detection by the Sword of Purification through advanced techniques. Elizabeth had commented that the technique was more than just a simple mechanism. She said it had allowed him to cast a massive technique to fight the entire area, which would have turned into a large-scale hatching site. She laughed, saying it would have been ridiculous. Meanwhile, Lo Ping was still reeling from the encounter, wondering if what had attacked him was indeed a parasite. The prospect of being bitten seemed daunting. Elder Sword was curious and questioned Elizabeth on how she discovered the parasite. However, Elizabeth chose not to disclose her method, stating that it was none of his concern. After hearing this, Elder Sword started laughing, saying that although they had grown weak, they still could not be disregarded. Meanwhile, Bose was really surprised, thinking that things might turn out bad since the Elder was someone who's sensitive about his pride. If he doesn't recognize the identities of Le Ping and the Demon Queen, he will definitely consider them beneath him. If he offends the Demon Queen, the consequences will be dire too. So Bose asked Le Ping if he understood what just happened and could explain it to everyone. Le Ping was confused about why Bose was asking him, and not having figured it out himself either, was suddenly interrupted by Elizabeth, who grabbed his hand and said that it was time for their afternoon tea and discussion time was over. She ordered him to go back with her. Le Ping said goodbye to Bose, stating he would see him next time. Bose was really scared, thinking if Le Ping didn't explain himself clearly, that stingy Elder would cause trouble for him. Even if the Sword Saint returned, there would be no way to save this. Elizabeth became really angry at Bose, asking him if he wanted to die. After hearing this, Bose quickly shut his mouth and said goodbye to Elizabeth happily. Meanwhile, Elder Sword asked Butler Ash to follow him. They were going to the south right now to investigate the Sword Saint matter. In the past, Le Ping had asked Elizabeth if something like that happened in the future, to tell him in advance so he could be mentally prepared. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was thinking there were two pieces of information worth mentioning. Firstly, Mr. Tegor's glasses could detect other people's magic, probably forged from Jim's red demon eyes. Secondly, the magic power of that one was different from that of the Dark Guild. It was clear that there were still other evil forces outside of the Dark Guild who were on the move. But that didn't matter because Amelia had eradicated the headquarters of the Dark Guild, and the source of this trouble was no longer there. The remaining ones were just left for Le Ping to deal with as an adventurer. However, that magic really scared Le Ping. He was really glad that no such things were living in his yard. But he was really curious and asked Elizabeth how she could sense that Mr. Tegor was a bad guy. Le Ping wondered if Elizabeth could teach him that skill. He then realized it must have been a form of magic that required magical power, which he lacked the talent for. Elizabeth knew that when the glass detected magic power, there was no magical reflection. She explained that if he weren't as strong as her, he wouldn't be able to detect it under normal circumstances. But wearing clothes made by him, he wouldn't need a magical reflection to detect all malicious intentions the other party wished to inflict. Le Ping, feeling underestimated, questioned if his inquiry was perceived as mockery, aiming to challenge her authority as the Demon Queen. Elizabeth, visibly annoyed, retorted that Le Ping was not worth her attention. Feeling anxious, Le Ping asked Elizabeth what he should do next. He wondered if just swinging the sword 1,000 times a day was really enough. He felt he needed to learn some sword moves, but the Sword Saint Guild had refused to take him in. "Why won't you teach me?" he asked Elizabeth. Elizabeth firmly declined, explaining the conditions. She said that to rule the world, he must rely only on his swordsmanship and magic. He couldn't bring any of his other creations with him, except his clothes. Even though she would accompany and guide him, she wouldn't teach him any magic or swordsmanship. Confused, Ping wondered when they had agreed to these terms. Elizabeth replied that they had agreed just now. Frustrated, Le Ping threatened to seek guidance from Bose again. Even if he switched to cards, Bose should still be able to teach him the swordsmanship he had learned before. However, Holy Sword Alpha, transforming into his human form, advised Le Ping to give up. He said they simply couldn't teach him pure swordsmanship. Le Ping was puzzled and asked Alpha what pure swordsmanship was. Alpha explained that even without relying on magic, none of their techniques would be effective. Le Ping questioned why anyone would learn pure swordsmanship just to strengthen their body if magic was available. Conceding to Alpha's logic, Le Ping admitted that what Alpha was saying made sense. In this magical world, combat demands the use of magic sword techniques that integrate magic. However, a sudden recollection of pure swordsmanship and body strengthening made Le Ping stand up from his seat and head towards the bookshelf. He exclaimed that he had found what he was looking for, the Holy Sword. Alpha, curious, wondered what Le Ping had discovered, especially since this was his first visit in a while. Le Ping recalled obtaining the item randomly from the system as a gift, only to discard it on the bookshelf where it collected dust. Was this the item he was referring to? Alpha was curious about what kind of place could keep Elizabeth so engaged, preventing her from wanting to go out and rule the world. He decided to investigate, but was surprised by the many unfamiliar things he encountered, questioning what these strange items were as he ventured further. He suddenly felt a strong urge to murder, but he couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Then he understood that he had just been metaphorically murdered. He wondered if it was him, but the sharpness of the intent didn't match. Was it Elizabeth? No, her intent should have been more violent and scary. Then he realized it was coming from the kitchen. He was shocked to see kitchen knives. How was this possible? He, the king of weapons with his holy sword Alpha, couldn't understand how he could feel threatened by mere kitchen knives. Overwhelmed by fear, he ran out of the house, refusing to stay inside. Le Ping was puzzled by Alpha's sudden departure, but he wasn't too worried. Finally, he found what he had been looking for, the Tai Chi sword technique. It was known for being easy to learn and providing moderate exercise. People said it could help prevent diseases, extend life, maintain fitness, and even prevent osteoporosis and arthritis. The technique aimed to reveal the secrets of nature. Le Ping was surprised by how he had ignored it before. Now he found the book useful. It described 13 Tai Chi sword movements that seemed simple and suitable for people of all ages. No magic was needed. Le Ping was genuinely curious if it could work in a fight, so he asked Elizabeth if she could help him with the sword manual he found. But Elizabeth, feeling tired after eating too many chips, said no, she wanted to rest. Le Ping felt really disappointed by Elizabeth's answer. He decided he would go find Alpha and try it out himself. After Le Ping left, Elizabeth started smiling, thinking to herself that he wouldn't be able to master swordsmanship and teamwork soon. She decided to let him practice slowly and blindly on his own. When he hit a wall and had no idea what to do next, she planned to step in and guide him. Only then could she underscore her superior position to him. Le Ping, upon leaving the house, began calling the name of his holy sword, Alpha, wondering where it was. Suddenly, he noticed that Holy Sword Alpha had transformed back into its sword form, which confused him. Le Ping warned Holy Sword Alpha that if it ignored him, he would take it as consent to start practicing. However, there was no response from Holy Sword Alpha, so he opened the Tai Chi sword skill book and started practicing the first move, resembling a dragonfly touching the water. Meanwhile, 300 kilometers away, Toad Immortal, a level 3-star demon ancestor, and the frog shown at the start of this story were in bad shape. Toad Immortal's body was covered in blood as he fought with Demon Burial. He tried using his stomach acid mist technique to attack Demon Burial, but it didn't work. Demon Burial retaliated, declaring that as long as she murdered him, the others would obediently surrender. She used her move Chopping Shoot to attack him, sending Toad Immortal flying across the field. In one swift punch, Demon Burial made a hole in Toad Immortal's chest, leaving him in a really bad state. Toad Immortal's body was covered in wounds. Demon Burial was quite impressed, seeing so many powerful monsters serving as guards for Elizabeth. She thought it was no wonder she could hide so well. Then she readied his final attack to finish Toad Immortal, declaring that his peaceful days were over. But just in time, Robot Dog stepped in to save Toad Immortal using his sound-absorbing energy field. Seeing another troublesome enemy, Demon Burial was surprised, and Robot Dog started barking at her. Toad Immortal, upon seeing Robot Dog, sighed in relief, saying that since his dear elder brother joined the battle, he would retreat for now. With that, he vanished, leaving Robot Dog alone. Demon Burial warned Robot Dog to move out of her way if he didn't want to die. Robot Dog checked his system list, but couldn't find Demon Burial in the white. Noting the high-risk level, he asked Demon Burial not to disturb his master's life. According to the highest law, he would eliminate the individual. He then activated Defense Level 3 and started attacking Demon Burial with a barrage of missiles. Meanwhile, on the other side, Le Ping continued practicing his swordsmanship. After practicing for a long time, he finally mastered it, thinking it wasn't that difficult. When Le Ping finished his swordsmanship practice, Holy Sword Alpha transformed into his human form. Surprised, Le Ping asked why he had appeared now instead of when he was called. Holy Sword Alpha replied that he had finally recovered. Le Ping said he had arrived just in time and asked for some advice on his swordsmanship. Holy Sword Alpha, confused, wondered which swordsmanship Le Ping was talking about. Le Ping reassured him, saying not to worry, even though he knew Tai Chi sword was only for strengthening the body, not for battle. But after trying it once, he felt like his whole body was refreshed. Meanwhile, the Holy Sword Alpha remembered being chased by many scary weapons in Le Ping's house. One of them was strong enough to overpower him. Afraid for his dear life, he ran out of the house, not wanting to stay in such a scary place. But when a weapon admits defeat, its aura dissipates, and it returns to its original form. This is how the Holy Sword Alpha was turned back into his sword form. He felt sad realizing he was suppressed back to his original form just now, almost losing his soul and becoming a normal weapon. Despite being the pinnacle of weapons, the legendary holy sword, he wondered why he was so scared of those kitchen knives. If Li Ping hadn't picked him up to practice his swordsmanship just now, reawakening his aura to the minimum, Holy Sword Alpha would have been reduced to a mere tool for chopping wood. Li Ping saved the Holy Sword Alpha with swordsmanship beyond his understanding and then asked him for guidance. However, Holy Sword Alpha misunderstood, thinking Li Ping didn't need him, and the Demon Queen considered what he had as mere scrap. Holy Sword Alpha asked for forgiveness from Li Ping, crying and questioning the meaning of his existence, how he came to be, and why he was there again. It was so confusing for him, and he turned back into his sword form and flew away, wanting to leave the terrible place. Li Ping was surprised, wondering how he could learn swordsmanship without a sword. On the other side, Demon Burial dodged Robot Dog's attack. Then she asked him if he was really willing to be a lackey forever. She wanted Robot Dog to work with her to destroy the place, and they would split the outside world evenly afterward. But Robot Dog didn't care. Demon Burial floated into the sky and told Robot Dog that not appreciating favors didn't scare her. She used her powerful move, Chopping Shoot, which even murdered the Sword Saint, but Robot Dog easily dodged it. After that, he began to analyze the damage. He realized that if they weren't stopped, they would penetrate the mantle layer, causing magma to explode. This would lead to abnormal changes in the bottom layer and cause earthquakes, ultimately endangering his master's life. Suddenly, a robotic hand emerged from Robot Dog's back and grabbed Demon Burial's attack. Demon Burial started laughing upon seeing Robot Dog in a tough situation, thinking he couldn't escape. She unleashed another attack to eliminate Robot Dog, but then another hand emerged from Robot Dog and grabbed Demon Burial's attack. Shortly after, he started absorbing both of Demon Burial's attacks. In just a few seconds, he completely absorbed Demon Burial's attack and energy. Demon Burial, frustrated, wondered how it could be possible to absorb all of her attacks. However, Robot Dog thanked Demon Burial for the tasty energy. In exchange, he asked Demon Burial if she decided to leave now, he would let her go. Demon Burial became really angry and grabbed her demonic axe, saying that this move was originally reserved for dealing with that heartless person. But now she had no other choice but to use it to destroy the dog that was in her way. The constant shattering of hope, the eternal torment of waiting, the sadness and fury of being abandoned, and the resentment accumulated for 500 years were now gathered at one point, ready to explode at once. Dark energy began gathering around Demon Burial. Her demonic axe started absorbing that dark energy. She warned Robot Dog that after witnessing this, he would realize how fortunate it would have been to be chopped to death just now. Then she used her ultimate move, the Resentment Deadline. Robot Dog sat calmly, and it effortlessly grabbed a tiny mirror made by Li Ping with its robotic hand. Using the mirror, it reflected the attack from Demon Burial, which left the demon shocked and confused. The attack ripped through the outer layer of Earth and destroyed one of the planets in the solar system. Still bewildered, Demon Burial wondered if her 500 years of resentment had vanished in an instant. Suddenly, she noticed a dog-shaped unmanned drone and wondered what it was up to this time. Determined to destroy everything, she prepared to attack, but the unmanned drones quickly captured her in their force field. Meanwhile, our Robot Dog lay on the ground, soaking in the sunlight, and remarked that after dealing with that fierce woman, Elizabeth, Demon Burial must have been the strongest intruder he had ever faced. Luckily, he has been upgrading myself continuously, so it's game over for her. He had increased the force field control power to 50 grams. Demon Burial was really angry, saying she could endure this. She shouted loudly that she couldn't give up, but Robot Dog increased the force field control to 100 G. After that, Demon Burial's demonic axe broke into tiny pieces. Robot Dog thought that the intruders who had been coming recently seemed to have pretty good levels. It seemed like he had to go back and sift through the trash, pick some materials discarded by the master, and upgrade them. But suddenly, a hand stretched out from the ground. Robot Dog was really surprised, wondering if Demon Burial was not dead yet. However, this was not Demon Burial, but the Sword Saint Guild's Sword Saint. She used her lucky pendant, a super weapon called the Lucky Star that wandered around the universe and passed through the Hero Continent every 10 years. Each time it passed, it would drop a small amount of Lucky Star pieces. Sword Saint had collected enough pieces while traveling all over the world during her adventures in her early years. She commissioned the Dwarf King to personally forge them into jewelry. She said that wearing it can greatly increase the wearer's luck. Over at Ping's house, Elizabeth was munching on chips and watching TV. She found the ads super annoying, just like many of you might, so she thought about asking Ping to get her a membership to skip the ads. Then she noticed she polished off all the chips. But for her, that wasn't the end. The best part was yet to come. Those last few bits of chips coated in lots of seasoning powder. They were seriously addictive for her, taking her satisfaction to the next level. She confessed that she loved this part the most when eating chips. It was almost time to check on Ping's swordsmanship training, but Elizabeth thought he must have been struggling with it. She knew it was necessary for him to be ready for the challenge ahead. He had to undergo hellish training before understanding the art of swordsmanship. She imagined that just when he had no clue what to do and was about to give up, she would appear to guide him. She got really excited thinking about this, so she opened the door and asked Ping if he hadn't been lazy and inquired how the training had been going. She had come to check on him, but she was surprised to see Ping sitting cross-legged like that when she had asked him to practice his swordsmanship. However, Ping ignored Elizabeth because he was busy practicing his yoga. Elizabeth asked Ping again what he was doing, but he didn't say anything. Elizabeth wondered if Ping had encountered a setback and lost face, so he wanted to escape from the problem, right? It didn't matter. She changed her mind. As long as he bowed his head and asked her for guidance, she was still willing to teach him a few moves. She guaranteed Ping that after he learned them, he would be able to run rampant in the outside world. Ping ignored her again. After completing his meditation, Ping asked Elizabeth if she was talking to him just now. He apologized to Elizabeth, explaining that he had just come out from a Tai Chi meditation state. Elizabeth felt frustrated as she told Ping that it seemed like he thought he did well in his practice. But she made it clear that what he aimed to learn was swordsmanship, not just meditation. She thought the meditation was pointless. Ping started smiling and pointed his stick towards Elizabeth, asking her what she meant by calling it pointless. He explained that these were strengthening exercises and, more importantly, they cultivated the mind and nourished the body. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was busy eating potato chips and watching TV. Ping had already mastered the entire set of 13 Tai Chi swordsmanship moves and was very proficient. He then asked Elizabeth if she would like him to demonstrate them for her, so she could give him some guidance. Elizabeth agreed, thinking that since he wanted to make a fool out of himself, she wouldn't stop him. She doubted that he could have mastered any sword skills just by practicing some horizontal and vertical slashes in such a short time. After that, Ping started explaining that the most important part of practicing Tai Chi was keeping a calm mind, closing your eyes, and getting the right posture. He then showed Elizabeth the first move, Dragonfly touches the water. Elizabeth was surprised to see Ping show such power with just one move, but she remembered he was the legendary hero after all. Having lived with him for so long, she knew him well. However, in such a peaceful state, there seemed to be no threat at all. She wondered where the destructive power of the sword had gone. After that, he demonstrated the second move, Swallow catches the insect, and the third move, Dust floats in the wind. Suddenly, the sky started changing, with clouds gathering. Elizabeth was surprised to see his power transform. Water started floating around Ping as he changed his stance and performed his fourth move, Sudden thunderstorm, with lightning striking all around him. Elizabeth was astonished, wondering how he could reach this level in such a short time. She claimed that it must be surpassed, offering Ping some guidance as she returned to her Demon Queen state. Ping had used his fifth move, Blue Dragon, out of the water. Suddenly, a very big water dragon appeared in front of Elizabeth. When she saw this, she grabbed her demonic sword of destruction. In the next moment, a massive purplish demon dragon came down to earth. The two dragons began attacking each other, but unfortunately for Elizabeth, Ping's water dragon defeated her dragon. In the next moment, everything returned to normal, the sky cleared, and a beautiful moon appeared. Elizabeth felt really angry after witnessing this. She thought it was unreasonable for her sword force to become so weak in front of him. Ping explained that when he stood calm, his mind was not lacking. When standing still, his mind was at peace. He must remain calm with every move, staying calm in the face of events. Only then could he grasp the essence of Tai Chi. Then he touched his stick to the water where the moon's reflection shimmered. Suddenly, the moon seemed to emerge from the water itself. This was Ping's eighth move, Moon in the Water. When Elizabeth saw this, she wondered if Ping was pretending to be weak to trick her into a fight again. But when it came to sword fighting, Elizabeth thought Ping had picked the wrong field of expertise. Meanwhile, the moon started getting bigger. Elizabeth also started to get more serious and didn't hold back against Le Ping. Just when she planned on attacking, everything suddenly began to float in the air. Elizabeth couldn't help but curse and wondered if Le Ping was trying to control her using gravity, but she said she wouldn't let him. However, before she could act, she realized that Le Ping had changed the scene once again, and now they were standing on the moon's surface. Le Ping then began preparing his next move, saying that as the moves of the Tai Chi sword progressed, the state of the mind became calm and vast. They began to understand the mysteries of nature. Then he showed the ninth move, meteor catching the moon. Elizabeth was shocked to see that each meteor was comparable to her destructive magic, and there were so many of them. She transformed into her demon form, admitting it was her fault for underestimating him. But if he thought he could beat her in swordsmanship, he was very wrong. After that, she cut through all the meteors into pieces and started running toward Le Ping, determined to defeat him that day. She claimed her swordsmanship was the strongest in history and unbeatable. Then she used her powerful move, All Things Full Slash, and alongside Le Ping, she cut the moon into 2 pieces. But after regaining her senses, she realized she was so overwhelmed by the desire to beat him that she wondered if she hadn't actually murdered him. However, she was shocked to see that Le Ping had merged with the universe. Le Ping explained that the vastness of emptiness, staying calm, and sincerity embody the state of mind that is spacious. Elizabeth was confused about what Le Ping was talking about. He was describing the embodiment of Tai Chi and the body close to nature. He then used the 10th move, holding of the moon. Like literally, bro held the slashed moon and put it back together. That's it for today's recap. Give us a like and subscribe for more videos. See you next time.